I don't owe you anything. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't hesitate. She said it calmly, like she was stating a fact everyone in the room should already understand. We were standing in the kitchen, the lights still on even though it was past midnight, my phone buzzing on the counter because I'd just asked a question she didn't want to answer. I remember the exact moment something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, sickening click. I asked her who she was texting at 12:47 a.m. She smiled. Not nervous. Not guilty. Amused. Why do you always need to know everything? She said. I don't owe you explanations. I don't owe you sex. I don't owe you loyalty. That word. Loyalty. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process how easily it came out of her mouth. Like it was something outdated. Optional. Like a subscription she'd already canceled. I told her we were married. I reminded her of the years. The promises. The life we'd built. She rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter like I was embarrassing her. You're being dramatic, she said. You're acting insecure again. Again. As if this was a pattern. As if I was the problem. I asked her one more time if there was someone else. She didn't say no. She just shrugged and said, even if there was, it wouldn't be your business. I don't belong to you. That was it. That was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting for a marriage anymore. I was standing in front of someone who had already left and was daring me to catch up. She went to bed like nothing happened. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at my phone, finally understanding something I'd been too afraid to admit. If she truly believed she owed me nothing, then I didn't owe her my blindness anymore. Before that night, if you'd asked me about our marriage, I would have said we were fine. Not perfect, not some Instagram fantasy, but solid enough. We'd been together long enough to know each other's flaws, long enough to fall into routines that felt safe instead of exciting. I thought that was normal. I thought that was what grown-up relationships turned into. We met in our late 20s, back when everything felt possible and effort still came naturally. She used to laugh at my stupid jokes, used to text me just to say she missed me. When we got married, she cried during her vows. I remember thinking, this is it. This is my person. Life happened fast after that. Jobs, bills, long workdays, weekends that disappeared into errands and exhaustion. Somewhere along the way, affection turned into efficiency. We became good at functioning together, paying rent, splitting chores, showing up to family events as a unit. I noticed changes, but I told myself they were normal. She became more distant, more critical. Compliments disappeared. Touch became rare. Conversations turned shallow, transactional. If I brought it up, she'd sigh and tell me I was reading too much into things. You're overthinking, she'd say. Everything doesn't have to be a big emotional discussion. So I stopped pushing. I convinced myself love didn't always feel warm. That stability mattered more than passion. That dry seasons passed if you just stayed patient enough. What I didn't realize back then was this. She wasn't drifting with me. She was already drifting away. And while I was trying to protect what we had, she was quietly rewriting the rules without telling me. The changes didn't hit all at once. That's the part that still messes with my head. If it had been sudden, dramatic, I would have reacted faster. Instead, it came in small, reasonable pieces. Easy to excuse. Easy to explain away. She started guarding her phone. Not obviously at first. Just turning the screen down when I walked by, taking calls in the other room. When I asked who it was, she'd say work without looking at me. She used to leave her phone everywhere. Couch, bathroom, kitchen counter. Suddenly, it was glued to her hand like a lifeline. Her schedule got unpredictable. Late meetings, drinks with coworkers, group projects that turned into last-minute deadlines. If I questioned it, she'd sigh and tell me I was being controlling. That word shut me up every time. I didn't want to be that guy. She stopped asking about my day, stopped remembering things I told her. If I talked too long, she'd interrupt or scroll while I was mid-sentence. When I pointed it out, she said I was too sensitive, that I needed to toughen up. The physical distance was the hardest to admit. Touch disappeared slowly. No more reaching for my hand. No leaning into me on the couch. When I tried, she pulled away and said she was tired or stressed. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Looking back, all the warning signs were there. They just didn't scream. They whispered. And I was so focused on keeping the peace that I taught myself not to listen. I wasn't blind. I was hopeful. And hope can be louder than instinct, until it's not. There were moments that should have stopped me cold. Moments that, if I'm being honest, did stop me, just not long enough. Every time my gut tightened, my brain rushed in to smooth it over. I became my own best liar. She stopped inviting me to things. Office parties. Birthday dinners. It's just coworkers, she'd say. You wouldn't have fun. I told myself she was protecting me from boredom, not protecting a secret. Her stories stopped lining up. One night, she said she was with Sarah. A week later, she said Sarah had moved teams months ago. When I pointed it out, she laughed and called me paranoid. Why are you keeping track of this stuff? She asked. I apologized for noticing. Then there were the unexplained expenses. Hotel charges labeled as conferences. Ride shares at midnight to places that weren't near her office. When I asked, she snapped. Said money stressed her out, and I was making it worse. So I dropped it. Love teaches you to doubt yourself before you doubt the person you trust. The biggest red flag was how easily she made me feel small. Every question turned into an attack. Every concern became proof that I was insecure. She didn't just deny things. She rewrote reality until I was the problem. I told myself all couples go through phases. That marriage isn't supposed to feel easy all the time. That trust means giving someone the benefit of the doubt, even when it hurts. What I didn't realize then was this. I wasn't explaining away red flags. I was training myself not to see them. And once you do that, the truth can stand right in front of you and still feel invisible. The first real suspicion didn't come from her phone or her schedule. It came from her reaction to a question that shouldn't have mattered. I asked casually, "Who are you texting so late?" Not accusing, not tense, just curious. She froze. Not for long, maybe half a second, but it was enough. Her shoulders stiffened. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Then she laughed, too loudly, and said, "Wow, seriously? I can't even text without being interrogated now." That was the moment something shifted inside me. Because the anger didn't match the question. It was disproportionate, defensive, sharp, like I'd hit a nerve she didn't want touched. Later that night, I noticed she'd changed her phone password. She didn't tell me. I just couldn't unlock it anymore. When I mentioned it, she rolled her eyes and said she needed privacy. That word again. The one that made me feel guilty for wanting honesty in my own marriage. I started replaying things in my head. The late nights. The sudden confidence mixed with distance. The way she dressed differently for work days, but barely looked at me at home. It was like connecting dots I'd been deliberately skipping. I didn't have proof. Just a feeling. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Impossible to ignore. That night, lying next to her while she slept peacefully, I realized something terrifying. I trusted her less than I trusted my own silence. And once that thought takes root, you don't unthink it. Ever. After that night, something in me switched on. Not rage. Not paranoia. Awareness. I didn't confront her. I didn't snoop, at least not at first. I just started paying attention. Really paying attention. The kind you don't do when you still believe everything is fine. I noticed how she'd angle her phone away from me on the couch. How she'd suddenly take calls in the bathroom, whispering, then come out acting annoyed like I'd interrupted something important just by existing. I noticed how she'd get dressed with care before leaving, then come home exhausted and cold, barely looking at me. One morning, she told me she'd be late because of a meeting. She said it casually, already reaching for her keys. But when I asked what the meeting was about, she hesitated. Just like before. Same pause. Same edge in her voice when she snapped. Why does it matter? That's when I realized I wasn't imagining things. Patterns don't lie. People do. I started tracking time without meaning to. How long she was gone. How often plans changed. How frequently she accused me of being controlling when all I wanted was clarity. Every accusation felt like deflection. The worst part? She seemed calmer the more confused I became. Like my doubt gave her room to breathe. I wasn't spying yet. I was observing. And what I saw was a woman slowly detaching from our marriage, piece by piece, while insisting nothing was wrong. Once I started paying attention, the lies didn't just appear, they stacked on top of each other like badly placed bricks. She told me she was staying late at work, but her office lights were off when I drove by. She said she'd had dinner with coworkers, yet couldn't remember a single name when I asked who was there. One night she claimed she'd been exhausted all day, yet came home buzzing with energy, smiling at her phone like she'd just won something. When I gently pointed out inconsistencies, she didn't explain them. She attacked me. Why are you keeping score? Do you write everything down now? God, you're obsessed. That word again, obsessed. As if noticing contradictions in your own marriage was a character flaw. The stories changed depending on the day. Sometimes she forgot what she'd told me before. Sometimes she doubled down, insisting I'd misunderstood. Once, she even told me, straight-faced, that I'd imagined an entire conversation. That one shook me. Not because I believed her, but because she believed I might. The most unsettling part wasn't the lies themselves. It was how comfortable she was telling them. No hesitation. No guilt. Just smooth, effortless rewrites of reality. I started keeping things to myself. Not because I trusted her, but because I no longer trusted the truth to survive between us. And deep down, I knew. People who lie this casually aren't hiding nothing. They're hiding everything. I didn't catch them in bed. There was no dramatic scream or thrown phone. The discovery was quieter than that, and somehow worse. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary. Boring. She was in the shower, and her phone was on the kitchen counter, buzzing again and again. I wasn't trying to look. I swear that. But the screen lit up, and this time it wasn't a name, just a message preview. Last night was worth the risk. My chest went cold. Not angry. Not shocked. Cold. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. The password? Her birthday. The same one she accused me of forgetting every year. Inside was a thread that erased every doubt I'd been gaslighting myself over. Photos. Inside jokes. Plans. Complaints about me. Written like I was some obstacle, not her husband. She wasn't just cheating. She was narrating it. Confident. Casual. Like it was already her real life. One message burned into my brain. He doesn't suspect anything. He's too predictable. I sat there, on the kitchen floor, while the shower ran. Every lie suddenly aligned. Every pause made sense. Every accusation she'd thrown at me felt rehearsed now. When she walked out, towel wrapped around her, humming, she saw my face and stopped. For the first time, she knew. And for the first time, I wasn't asking questions. I didn't yell. That surprised both of us. I just held up her phone and said, "How long?" Her face didn't collapse the way I expected. No tears. No panic. Just irritation, like I'd interrupted her day. She sighed and crossed her arms. "So you went through my phone," she said flatly. Not "I'm sorry." Not "it's not what it looks like." That was her opening move, flip the blame. I told her I'd seen everything. The messages. The photos. The way she talked about me like I was stupid. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes. Calculation. Then she smiled. Actually smiled. "You're overreacting," she said. "It was just flirting. And even if it wasn't, I told you before. I don't owe you anything." There it was again. That sentence. Cold. Final. She said the affair just happened. That she'd been lonely. That I'd changed. That if I were more attentive, none of this would have occurred. Every excuse landed like a practiced line she'd rehearsed long before I ever found out. When I asked if she loved him, she shrugged. When I asked if she ever planned to tell me, she laughed. "I didn't think you'd ever actually do something," she said. "You're too passive." That hurt more than the cheating. Because in that moment, I realized she hadn't just betrayed me. She'd bet on my silence. Once the truth was out, she didn't try to fix anything. She tried to rewrite it. She told me I was remembering things wrong. That the messages were taken out of context. That the photos were jokes. That I'd invaded her privacy, and somehow that was the real betrayal here. Every sentence was designed to make me doubt my own eyes. When I reminded her of specific words she'd written, she said, "You're twisting it." When I quoted her exactly, she said, "I never said it like that." When I showed her the screen, she shrugged and said, "You're obsessed with details." She cried, but only when I stopped arguing. Not because she was sorry, because she was losing control of the narrative. The tears came with lines like, "I guess I'm just a terrible wife," said in a way that dared me to comfort her. At one point she leaned in and said, calmly, "If you were stronger, this wouldn't hurt you so much." That was the moment I understood. She wasn't confused. She wasn't ashamed. She was strategic. The gaslighting wasn't panic, it was policy. And the scariest part? A small part of me still wanted to believe her. That's how deep manipulation goes. It makes the truth feel negotiable. I didn't break down right away. That came later. At first, I functioned on autopilot. I went to work. I answered emails. I nodded during conversations without hearing a word. My body was moving, but my mind was stuck replaying everything she'd said, every lie, every shrug, every time she made me feel small for caring. Then one night, alone in the apartment, it hit me all at once. I sat on the edge of the bed we used to share, and felt something inside me finally give out. Not anger, not even sadness. It was exhaustion. The kind that sinks into your bones when you realize the person you trusted most never existed the way you believed. I cried until my chest hurt. Not just because she cheated, but because I'd been loyal to someone who mocked that loyalty behind my back. Because I doubted myself instead of my instincts. Because I kept trying to earn respect from someone who had already decided I wasn't worth it. The worst part wasn't missing her. It was mourning the version of my life that was never real. That night, I understood something brutal but necessary. You don't collapse because you're weak. You collapse because you've been strong for too long. The decision didn't come with a dramatic speech or slammed doors. It came quietly, the morning after I stopped crying. I woke up and realized something terrifyingly simple. Staying would cost me more than leaving ever could. She was already awake, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. No apology. No hesitation. Just a casual, "So, what are we doing now?" As if this was a scheduling issue, not the aftermath of betrayal. That's when it clicked. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing convenience. I told her I was done. Not angrily. Not pleading. Just done. She laughed at first. Then she said I was being dramatic. Then she said I'd regret it. When none of that worked, she went quiet, the kind of silence that tries to scare you into changing your mind. But I didn't. For the first time since this started, I chose myself. Not revenge. Not justice. Peace. I packed a bag. I called a lawyer. I walked out without looking back. And as the door closed behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The first few days after I left felt unreal, like I was walking around in someone else's life. I stayed on a friend's couch, barely slept, barely ate. Every little thing hit harder than I expected. Silence was the worst part. No arguing. No passive-aggressive comments. No phone buzzing with excuses or accusations. Just quiet. She didn't take it well. The messages started almost immediately. One minute she was furious, telling me I ruined everything and that I was weak for walking away. The next minute she was suddenly nostalgic, talking about memories, inside jokes, trips we took years ago. Then she switched again, saying I was overreacting and that it wasn't even that serious. It messed with my head more than I want to admit. I kept replaying everything, wondering if I missed signs, wondering if I was stupid for trusting her, wondering if I should have seen it coming sooner. At night, my brain wouldn't shut off. I'd stare at the ceiling, feeling angry one moment and empty the next. What surprised me most was how fast my body reacted once I was out. My chest felt lighter. I wasn't constantly tense. I wasn't bracing myself for the next lie. The stress I'd normalized for years was finally gone, and only then did I realize how heavy it had been. Friends started telling me things too. Stuff they'd noticed but never said. Times she flirted too much. Moments that made them uncomfortable. Hearing it hurt, but it also confirmed I wasn't crazy. I still missed the version of her I thought I married. But that version wasn't real anymore. Maybe it never was. And slowly, through the mess, one thought kept coming back. I didn't lose her. I escaped something that was already destroying me. Acceptance didn't arrive all at once. It came in small, uncomfortable moments I didn't expect. Like the first morning I woke up and didn't immediately think about checking my phone to see if she'd texted. Or the first evening I realized I hadn't replayed our last argument in my head all day. I stopped responding to her messages. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Every reply pulled me back into the chaos. Every explanation invited another lie, another rewrite of history. Distance was the only thing that made the noise fade. She tried everything to break that distance. Some days she acted like nothing happened, asking practical questions about bills or random things around the apartment, as if we were still a team. Other days she sent long paragraphs about guilt, regret, and how she was finally being honest now. Then, without warning, she'd flip again and accuse me of abandoning her when she needed me most. That pattern made something click in my head. It wasn't about fixing what she broke. It was about control. About keeping me emotionally available while taking zero responsibility. Once I saw that, it got easier to let go. I started setting real boundaries. Blocked her on social media. Changed passwords. Told mutual friends I didn't want updates about her life. At first it felt cruel. Then it felt peaceful. The version of me that kept trying to understand her, to give her the benefit of the doubt, slowly disappeared. In its place was someone quieter, more grounded, Someone who finally understood that closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from walking away and not looking back. Distance didn't make me cold. It made me free. Looking back now, the betrayal wasn't the moment she cheated. It was the moment she looked me in the eye and said, "I don't owe you anything." That sentence stripped the illusion away. It showed me exactly how she saw our marriage. Not as a partnership, not as loyalty, not as shared responsibility, but as something optional when it stopped serving her. For a long time, I thought being faithful meant enduring disrespect. I thought loyalty meant staying quiet, being patient, and hoping things would somehow return to what they used to be. I was wrong. What I learned is this: loyalty without respect is self-betrayal. Cheating doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts when someone decides your feelings don't matter, when they lie easily, when they rewrite reality to avoid accountability, when they treat commitment like a burden instead of a choice. Walking away wasn't easy. It hurt. It shattered the version of the future I thought I was building. But staying would have cost me something worse: my self-respect. If anyone reading this is in a similar place, here's the truth I wish I'd accepted sooner. You don't fix someone who refuses to be honest. You don't negotiate with someone who feels entitled to hurt you. And you don't owe loyalty to a person who already broke it. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fighting for the relationship. It's choosing yourself and leaving with your dignity intact. That's the lesson I'm taking with me. And I won't forget it again.